Greetings everyone, and welcome to the Sonic 290 review. As you can tell by the cover, today's adaptation is Sonic CD. I'm a little nervous about this one since I berated the previous issue, mainly in terms of structure. As before, I won't bother with a recap, so let's get started. We begin with Sonic traveling through the land until he comes across this giant steel ball chained to the ground. This is actually a place called Little Planet, and it is supposed to appear once a year over Never Lake. As Sonic notes, it cannot leave while chained to this mountain, and the mountain face reveals the culprit. Wait, what's this here? Time Eater? That's a Sonic Generations reference. File that away for later. Sonic prepares for action when this little pink hedgehog girl appears. Her name is Amy Rose, and she said she's destined to meet him here based on these cards she's holding. Let's take a quick peek at them. I see 3 of them with what appears to be different monsters on each. Sorry, Amy, I don't see the significance to them. None whatsoever. Amy promises to follow Sonic wherever he goes. And with that, Sonic ditches her and heads straight for Little Planet. You may feel free to call Sonic a jerk or any related terms at this point. Sonic runs into some Badniks, and he ponders how Eggman could have built all this stuff since the Death Egg incident. Speaking of which, we cut over to Eggman as he's in contact with Snively, who's working on Death Egg repairs. Snively points out repairs would go faster if resources weren't divided between it and some amusement park called Carnival Night. Also, some native at the Death Egg's location's been asking questions. But never mind about that. Sonic's arrived and Eggman said the Hedgehog will not stop his plan to use items called Time Stones to erase all the setbacks he's suffered. A plan that Sonic never knew about until now. Good one, Eggman. 300 IQ my foot. They fight, and Sonic easily decimates Eggman's machine. Eggman is surprised since the machine's supposed to be reinforced, yet it suddenly became weaker overnight. File this away for later. Amy's arrival allows Eggman to escape while also giving him an idea. Sonic's naturally angered about this. And I'm with you, Sonic. While I'm impressed with Amy's determination to keep up, it's also a bit creepy. Sonic tries to shoo her away, but Amy believes nothing bad will happen as long as he's around. You just had to say it, my dear. Right on cue, we meet another robotic Sonic. Hey, I guess Eggman took my advice and made a smaller, sleeker, speedier robot this time. Even colored it blue. The robot wastes no time kidnapping Amy. Sonic gives chase.
Future.
Yes, Sonic, you did hear someone say future. And passing the signpost saying future does send him to the future. Passing this signpost saying past sends him further back in time, where he encounters this Badnik factory. Sonic finally gets Eggman's plan. Well, as much as possible without giving him a headache. What's on Sonic's mind at the moment is trashing the factory. When he returns to the future, it looks good. He time travels through 2 more areas and repeats the process. At last, he reaches Eggman and the robotic doppelganger called Metal Sonic. Amy Rose is at the end of this racing course. The door at the finish line will close after the winner passes, and Eggman will fire a burning laser from behind. With all that stacked against Sonic, he decides to be pragmatic and start the race early. We then get a 2-page spread of the race with Sonic and Metal Sonic taking the lead at various points. At the end, Sonic crosses the finish line, the door slams closed, and Metal Sonic slams into the door. Sonic rescues Amy, but Eggman sees this as another minor setback he'll erase once his UFOs return. More on that later. Sonic fills Amy in on the time stones and figures if he gets all of them, he can prevent Eggman from winning. The issue ends with Sonic and Amy off to ensure that Little Planet has a good future. Oh, we've got a lot of ground to cover with this one. First, the events of Sonic CD come before the events of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, as evidenced by Eggman's conversation with Snively. While personally I prefer Sonic 3 and Knuckles to come after Sonic 2, I'm not that bothered with it in the comics because earlier issues of the new continuity established Sonic Unleashed happening after Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations. Speaking of Generations, it seems the events of that game recently happened from classic Sonic's point of view. Makes sense because the classic Sonic in the game would be around Sonic 2. It might also explain classic Eggman's plan to use the Time Stones to erase past mistakes. He got a taste of it while teaming up with modern Eggman. But that would mean when modern Eggman encounters the Time Eater, he would remember the Sonic CD events and I better stop now before I get a headache. Conveniently, classic Sonic doesn't remember the exact details of Sonic Generations. This kinda makes sense because messing with space and time in the Sonic universe tends to affect one's memory. I assume classic Eggman experienced the same thing. As for how classic Eggman got out of the White Void, I mentioned in an earlier review that modern Eggman could have dropped him off before teaming up with Dr. Wily. There's also the possibility of Little Planet and the Time Stones getting involved, though honestly, we never find out how classic Eggman got out of the White Void. To wrap up the memory thing, of course classic Sonic and classic Eggman had to forget. It's the events of Sonic CD that introduced Amy Rose and Metal Sonic. And classic Sonic met Metal Sonic and an older Amy in Generations. Amy Rose meets Sonic for the first time, chronologically at least. And it follows her backstory in the games, that she has the ability to read fortunes using tarot cards. Though why her cards have pictures of Eldritch Abominations from Adventure 06 and Unleashed is beyond me. Could be foreshadowing, or it could be a shout out. You decide. For its first time out, Metal Sonic wasn't that impressive. It kidnaps Amy, races Sonic, and gets smashed against the door. It'll be some time before it becomes a real threat. Another thing that wasn't threatening was Eggman's boss mech, the Egg HVC-001, even though he claimed to reinforce it the day before. Here's a possible reason. Sonic's travels through time and creating good futures means less facilities to maintain Eggman's machines. The battle even takes place in the area's good future, as noted by the natural settings and the boss colors. Had it been a bad future, the setting would be bleak and the mech would have a different paint job. The stages, or rounds, Sonic goes through include Palm Tree Panic, Collision Chaos, aka the place where Metal Sonic kidnaps Amy, Tidal Tempest, Quartz Quadrant, Wacky Workbench, and the site of the race, Stardust Speedway. Please note that Tidal, Quartz, and Wacky are seen at different stages thanks to time travel. Which brings us to the methods used, the signposts. Like in the game, when Sonic moves past a post that says future or past, he will go to that respected time period. According to Sonic, they're powered by the Time Stones, which I guess makes sense, but how does he know this? Sonic's plan to get all the Time Stones to stop Eggman is a good idea. If the Doctor has at least one Time Stone, he can transform all of the good futures into bad futures, thus erasing Sonic's hard work. By getting all the Time Stones, Sonic will guarantee a good future for all areas, since that is what happens in the game. We just don't get to see it in the comics. And yes, we have one of these messages again. Admittedly, I'm not as bothered by this one as the one from the last issue. The UFO is referencing their appearance in the special zones. You need to destroy all the required ones in order to get the Time Stones. It's a bit odd that Sonic would take Amy with him, but it's probably to prevent Eggman from getting his hands on her again. Seeing how this is the new continuity version of Sonic CD, I should point out that yes, the old continuity had one too. In fact, it was the 25th issue, the comic's first milestone. What they had in common was 1. Robotnik using Metal Sonic, who's called Mecha Sonic here for some reason, to kidnap Amy, and 2. Sonic racing his robotic self to save Amy. Some differences include Robotnik and Metal Sonic tracking down Amy thanks to her letter addressed to Sonic. Long story. Snively disguising himself as Robotnik to burn the path, with Robotnik himself ready to press the gate closing button. The Freedom Fighters were involved, and Metal Sonic lost thanks to its legs melting trying to keep up with Sonic. Now what's the more humiliating defeat? Legs melting or smashing into a gate? It doesn't matter, they both get repaired later on. One more thing to note is the art. Tracy is trying to invoke the style of the Sonic CD animated scenes. While they're fine, Tyson's art does it much better in the Sonic Mega Drive saga. I'm giving this issue a 7. It's definitely the best of the arc so far. At the very least, it has the spirit of Sonic CD. Again, I'm not bothered by the play the game message because to me, the issue mostly shows the game and it completes its major objective, which is rescuing Amy Rose. Had the issue ended at the start of the Metal Sonic race, I'd be a little more upset. Sonic and Amy getting the Time Stones and saving Little Planet is a foregone conclusion. In terms of hypothetical arc placement, well, it would be at the beginning, but realistically, it might be either a two-parter or even a double-length issue to finish off this story. Speaking of endings, next issue will conclude Genesis of a Hero with a brief adaptation of my favorite 2D Sonic game. Yeah, I can't wait. Until then, have a good day and be safe. This native mentioned here, the one who's been asking questions. I'm sure it means that this person is very intelligent and not a gullible idiot.